So this is an experimental ESG program is being dubbed climate finance here in the U.S., and it's moving us in the same direction as the CCP's social credit score system in the name of saving the environment, of course. An excellent financial journalist by the name of Jordan Schachtel published a bit on that. Just 2 paragraphs. I'd like to quote here because it's really a good summary. He said the climate narrative is the chief rhetorical facilitator for the ESG movement. ESG acts as a Trojan horse for the continuing centralization of the American financial system. ESG finance, popularized by hyper-political asset management behemoths like BlackRock and Vanguard, acts to prevent outsiders from challenging the regime-connected insiders on Wall Street and in Washington under the guise of acting to manifest a healthier planet. In other words, pro-ESG institutions are committed to attacking free market principles by means of deception, preferring the CCP-style stakeholder capitalism that allows for a small group of technocratic elites to make broad determinations about society. Then he goes on, he says the ESG green transition, frequently popularized by powerful world governments and the World Economic Forum elite, has served as the main vehicle for this movement, akin to the Chinese social credit score, which is used to coerce businesses and, by extension, individuals into specific action. ESG rules force individuals and businesses in America to deploy capital through the gatekeepers of the system. End quote. So again, it's a power grab. They're taking things a step further, and they're going to try to use financial investment companies to reward those who are with them and oppose those who aren't.
What are some of these banks that are involved with this?
Yeah, the banks involved in this so-called pilot program of the Fed include Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. And as of a month or so ago, when I became familiar with this being underway, they said the program was set to launch in early 2023, and that's where we are right now. So this is going to be rolled out any time now. I'm curious to see what kind of media coverage, if any, there is, or if it's simply going to be a trial run. We'll find out here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I guess so. And most people will look at their credit card and say, I see that one of those groups you just named on my credit card.
Yeah, and I've personally been encouraging people to consider getting out of some of the larger national banks, because this is a question that's been getting asked a lot. What can we do? And I would put your money in smaller, but stable, locally held banks. And there still are some of those in our state. And I think at the very least it might buy us a little bit of time when they become more forceful in implementing all this agenda.
Yeah, there are 2 states that are actually pulling out from some of these kind of firms, are they not?
Well, they are, yeah. Several states have rebelled against the ESG agenda. I haven't discovered what's going on. So the governments of Florida, South Carolina, Missouri, and Louisiana have been leading the way. Several other states just announced last week and have recently decided to move their state's funds out of BlackRock because of that firm's commitment to the ESG agenda. So, I congratulate those states for doing what they've done and leading the way. Several other states are considering similar action. And I would encourage other investors to pull their funds from BlackRock, Vanguard, and any other institutional investment firms that have embraced this ESG agenda. So this is part of the bigger globalist agenda. This is simply how it's manifesting in the U.S. So we need to draw some lines in the sand here. And these people understand money. They don't understand anything else. And if enough conservatives got together and put pressure on, it may have at least some impact and push things back some.
Gary Cobb with us here today on Crosstalk. Gary, you've also read about the Federal Reserve Bank in New York launching a 12-week pilot program for a central bank digital currency. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, that took place. That announcement occurred on November 15th. And this pilot program that they've announced involves central banks, commercial banks, as well as regulated non-banks. And some of the banking giants participating in this particular trial run include BNY Mellon, Citibank, HSBC, MasterCard, PNC Bank, TD Bank, Truist, U.S. Bank, and Wells Fargo. Those are the names that we have. And the way they're going to operate this, Jim, is the U.S. dollar in this exercise will be represented as tokens and settled through simulated central bank reserves on a shared distributed ledger using technology provided by SPL and Digital Assets. Those are the names of 2 different companies involved in this. Also, SWIFT, the global payments provider that I'm sure everybody's familiar with, is also participating in this program, as is the New York Innovation Center, which is actually part of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is well thought out. In my opinion, it's more than an exercise. They're doing this run to work out any bugs maybe, and then they'll be ready to launch this at the earliest convenience when everything is just right from their standpoint.
Are there other nations jumping on board with this?
Yeah, France, Switzerland, and Singapore have already conducted a joint trial for their digital currencies. And this is one of the first of its kind where it's more than just one nation involved, where they were actually doing cross-border trial runs with their banking system with the digital currency. So they're pretty far along, and it's just a matter of time until they go completely digital. But China has made the most notable advances in this area, as I mentioned. According to Investopedia, China has tested its digital yuan in several provinces, and the currency is even available to users now on the popular app WeChat. It recently added 4 provinces to its list of regions for the CBDC trial, so it is being implemented in China. And as with its social credit score system, China is leading the way in the implementation of CBDC currencies.
Now, we have seen what COVID has done for the whole aspect of control to be launched by these governments taking control. They've given this social credit scores in China. That people were protesting. They just changed their green light to red, and all of a sudden they had to be confined. We know that there are further things that are going on. We've been monitoring the World Health Organization and this international pandemic treaty that is really going to be a mechanism that will be used by countries to have greater control over the people. What is the Biden administration's position on the World Health Organization's international pandemic treaty?
Well, they're all in. They're all in. Along with over 100 other countries that have already at least voiced their support of this international pandemic treaty. And this is just my opinion now, and I want to make that clear. I believe that the Fed's introduction of the digital dollar will probably be timed to precede or closely coincide with Biden's signing of the World Health Organization's international pandemic treaty. I think all these things are moving in tandem with each other. The ESG, the digital currency, and the WHO's international pandemic treaty. They'll play off of each other. And the treaty is being written in such a way, and it's close to being finished, but they're still tweaking it. Last night I knew that it's being written in such a way that it will usurp our national sovereignty and that of other nations if signed. So I do hope that Biden feels enough pressure from Congress that he won't go through with it, but I believe he is predispositioned to endorse it. And a lot of his cronies overseas and in Europe and Canada, they've already announced they're going to do it. So for Biden to hold out, we'd be one of the few major nations in the world that would immediately go along with it. So I kind of expect him to sign it. They're going to try to get all this ratified. The World Health Organization is during 2023, expecting a full implementation of it sometime in 2024.
We're going to take a quick break here. Back in a minute. This is Crosstalk.
Cemeteries and mausoleums are evidence of the sad reality of death, and that each of us has a divine appointment with death. According to surveys, Americans overwhelmingly believe that heaven exists and believe that most are going there. A small number believes that hell exists, with only 1/2% believing they will go there when they die. What if those who do not believe in hell die one day and find they made a tragic and eternal mistake? In the book, Hell is for Real, author Gary Fraser discusses the separation, the suffering, and the sorrow of hell, along with future events that will unfold. There is much information given by movies, television, psychics, and even by many religious circles. Gary presents scriptural truth on this important topic. VCY is making available the book Hell is for Real as our way of saying thank you for your support of $15 or more. 2 copies for a donation of $25. Just ask for it when you call 1-800-729-9829.
Real Estate Crosstalk on VCY America, and Gary Kahn with us today. His website, GaryKahn.org. K-A-H is the spelling for his last name. We're talking about this matter of globalism. Are we beyond the point of return? And Gary's unfolding for us things that are happening in this world around us. And friends, I hope you understand that these are not isolated things. This popping up in this country, that happened in that country, and COVID is here, and central bank is, these are all interconnected. And I think this is a very important point, that these are not isolated things that are transpiring, but everything is interconnected. And Gary, as we were talking about, even this World Health Organization International Pandemic Treaty, where the fine points are being worked out, and we know that in the earlier drafts, the Biden administration was all in for surrendering our sovereignty to the World Health Organization, whatever they deem, would become the law of the land here in the United States. But you were talking about some of the implementation. This is planned out for this year of 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, 2023 is the year that we want to get this signed and ratified in order to implement it in 2024. There are a number of signs pointing to that. One of those came to a new friend of mine who contacted me after hearing me on a talk show. He asked for the talk show host's permission to call me, and we had a lengthy conversation. He's been involved at a high level in the environmental movement before realizing that it was also part of the One World Agenda, so he kind of played along with it. And one of the gentlemen who he had lunch with, who belongs to the World Economic Forum, he just kind of cleverly asked the question, the way the Great Reset is moving along, do you think we can have this thing implemented by the end of the year, meaning last year? And without skipping a beat, this World Economic Forum member shot back. He said 2024, very emphatically, as if he understands that that's a target date for them with some type. And so I think they're getting everything prepared for that. But having said all of this, I want to be careful. I have never ever set dates. And the reason why I don't is because of the God factor. The Lord has pushed things back, held things up many times before, and so we cannot discount the fact that God can still intervene and push this back. But it's still helpful to know what our adversaries are planning because it gives us an idea of where they're going to take things and makes it less likely that we will be deceived. So I mentioned 2024 as a date that we believe they are targeting from, like I said, various sources that have had input and have shared with me on that. But whether or not it happens that quickly, only time will tell. We'll see. There is something, though, that I want to get this in my article, but it's too late. It's already going to print. And so I want to bring this up real quick, Jim. You remember Event 201 held back in October 2019?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tabletop exercise under dress rehearsal for a global COVID pandemic, and then like 2 months later, it unfolded virtually exactly like that tabletop exercise. Well, guess what? Another one of these was held this past October. It was held in Brussels, Belgium on October 23rd, and the name of this tabletop exercise was Catastrophic Contagion. That's actually what they call it, Catastrophic Contagion. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, in partnership with the World Health Organization and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, conducted this tabletop exercise in Brussels, Belgium. The group of participants consisted of 10 current and former health ministers, several of them from African nations, also Singapore, India, Germany were represented, as well as, of course, Bill Gates, the co-chairman of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he's been all over this from the beginning, heavily involved in all this. So the exercise simulated a series of WHO emergency health advisory board meetings addressing a fictional pandemic set in the near future. Participants grappled with how to respond to an epidemic located in one part of the world that then spread rapidly, becoming a pandemic with a higher fatality rate than COVID-19 and disproportionately affecting children and young people. That's from this article on that meeting. And so when I say we're not done with all this, it's because of developments like this that we're aware of. It's just a matter of time until the powers that be spring another so-called pandemic on us. And their goal is the next time around, when the next bioweapon is released, anyone who refuses to take the jab will have their digital wallet frozen if we're in a digital currency system by then. So if you want to purchase food, it may be difficult unless you take the latest vaccine. I really believe this is where they want to take things over the next 18 to 36 months unless people really wake up and begin to push back in a major way on members of Congress and others, making really them put pressure on the Biden administration. Otherwise, all this is going to unfold very rapidly.
Gary, I think it was also monkeypox that they had forecast that was going to come out in May of 2022, something of that nature.
Yeah, and it did, and people quickly found out, it really wasn't legal and that big of a threat, and so it kind of rolled over. They learned some things from it, testing people's will and how easily or with great difficulty that people respond to whatever the World Health Organization says. In this case, there's quite a bit of pushback on that. So I think the next pandemic, I hate to think this way. I know it's very dark. I think there are human beings plotting and scheming this type of thing, but I think it's going to be much more deadly than the COVID-19 pandemic, and they're going to give people every incentive imaginable to go out and get back. So it'll be interesting to see how people respond when that time comes. Do they learn their lesson from the COVID-19 vaccine and all the fallout from that, or are they going to make the same mistake again and just rush out there and get back? We'll see.
Gary, as you are aware, the World Health Organization really applauded China through this pandemic and applauded them for their response and all the things that China did. One thing that many people may not be aware of is that that is the United States, we're dependent on China for many of the life-saving medications that we have, including antibiotics.
Yeah, over 80% of our antibiotics are produced in China. It's actually closer to 90% the last I heard.
That's astounding.
Yeah, unbelievable. This is a national security matter. Our president, the last couple of presidents, should have never allowed to go this far. They should have intervened because of national security concerns on this. We import also so many of our strategic goods, from lithium batteries to solar panels to every sort of high-tech energy component from China that we're essentially held hostage. From an economic standpoint, we are boxed in. China, working closely with its globalist partners, the West, dominating and in some areas really completely controls the supply chain. And so they have us over a barrel and give them an enormous amount of leverage over the United States. So, if you think about this, years ago, if we would have said that an authoritarian Marxist superpower would have this kind of leverage over the United States, people would have rolled their eyes and think that was not going to happen. But it has. And not only that, China is collaborating very closely, as you mentioned, with the World Health Organization. And Tedros Ghebreyesus, the director of the WHO, is actually a very close ally and friend of Xi Jinping. And to go even a step further, before Ghebreyesus took on the leadership position within the World Health Organization, he was a socialist revolutionary leader in Ethiopia. And this is how he was rewarded for his actions there. He was made the director of the World Health Organization. So we've got a real winner on our hands here. This guy should never be. And that's the case with many of the leadership positions of UN figures. They're notorious socialists and have been for many years, so they have a track record. And so because the UN is saturated with internationalists and socialists, they bring these kind of people on board to actually run the organization, because this is what the UN ultimately is all about. And a lot of people admit that from the beginning, thinking the UN is a good organization. And they have done a few good things, but I think they've done those to provide a cover for what they really want to do, which is to bring about a global government, socialist, Marxist-based global government. And so performing a lot of good acts for organizations like UNICEF and other things out there, so they have done some good work overseas. It provides a type of outward positive image for the UN to keep moving forward with what they really want to do. And people have taken the bait for the most part.
China has been such a leader in these, in my opinion, very clandestine operations. China also very anti-God, and we see the persecution that's happened to believers there. Some people wonder, why doesn't God just pour out his judgment on China and at times like this?
Yeah, and I think that day will come. But I believe when we look at how God has operated in the past, with his people Israel, for example, you could ask, why didn't God judge the Assyrians and the Babylonians first? But he didn't. It was his own people, because they knew better and went in the wrong direction, despite all the warnings that God sent through his prophets. They became enmeshed in the same beliefs and practices as the nations around them. You could argue became even worse in some regards. And so finally God said enough. And he allowed those very nations to then overtake them and carry them into captivity. It happened with the northern kingdom and then with the southern kingdom. And I think America is in a similar situation right now. We were founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Although not perfect, our origins were firmly grounded in Judeo-Christian principles. We know better, we should have known better. And look at the shape we're in right now. From a morality standpoint, you could argue we're worse than Russia. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is right now, but a few years back, 80% of the pornography in the world, the major pornography, was coming out of the United States. The preponderance of sex trafficking and sex with children, all that kind of stuff. The U.S. is full of it. And Christians have become so much like the world in so many different ways. And God has warned, he's been patient, but how much longer is he going to wait? So all that to say, I personally believe that God will probably judge the United States before he judges our adversaries. He may actually use our adversaries to overtake the United States, unless there is a comprehensive repentance, very quickly. And I know that's a very negative thing to think about, but I really believe that with all my heart. God obviously is God, he can do what he wants, he can intervene at any point in time, but I don't believe he's going to do so if he doesn't see widespread repentance in our country.
Friends, as we talked about before, as it was in the days of Noah, and all you have to do is look at today's news and see the mirror of those days. Gary Kah is with us today. I'm going to open our phone lines here for our final segment. Our number 800-733-9829. We have time for a question or a brief comment. 800-733-9829. Gary Kah is our guest, and his website, GaryKah.org. And again, that's Gary spelled G-A-R-Y. Kah is K-A-H.org. GaryKah.org. Back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the BCY American Network. For the Worldview Report, I ran it now. Our website is worldviewreport.com. March 7th, 2023. The Pentagon, working in conjunction with the Astronomy Department at Harvard University, has released a paper. Please understand, this is the Pentagon that has released this paper. And what are they talking about? The fact that a mothership hovering between the Earth and the Sun is likely sending probes to check out Earth. UFOs. They call them unidentified aerial phenomenon. Folks, did you ever think you'd see the day when the Pentagon, working with Harvard, would release such a paper saying these may be extraterrestrials? Well, I believe, as I've said for so many years, the stage is being set for a great global spiritual deception. They're looking for a technocratic savior, a technology savior, and they may be shocked at what manifests. I think it's called demons and demonology. Are we beyond the point of return? That's a column written by Gary Kah. You can read more about it on his website as well, GaryKah.org. He has a newsletter that he puts out as well. Information on subscribing to it available on his website right now. We're going to your phone calls here at Crosstalk. The lines are packed out. We're going to begin with Joe in Laval, Wisconsin. Joe, you're on the air.
Mr. Kah pointed out that the Chinese are using corporate stakeholder capitalism to take over U.S. assets, and you also point out there's a lot of surveillance undertaken by the Chinese. So my question, Mr. Kah, is do you think the Chinese would post a lot of job openings in the United States for people like spy on each other, like make videos on smartphones and stuff, or do you feel that something that's more of a ground recruitment and not really posted in the open?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be that open about it, because everything they've done so far has been pretty underhanded. I know that in the food industry, for example, they've quietly taken over a good part of our meat production in the country and own some of the largest meat processing plants. And the way they've done that is through front organizations that they create, sometimes 2 layers, 3 layers deep, and ultimately the Chinese are running it. People don't know about it. Now with TikTok, there's pushback on that. That's been exposed. So they're going to operate as cleverly as they can.
Buying farmland or military bases. I mean, there's a method to that industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Joe. Christine, you're on the air.
Hi, Gary. I've been listening to your precious announcements for about 25 years now, and I know you're not a prophet of the sun, a prophet, but you've been on target every time, all the years. And I just want to say that we are not going to be under judgment, sir. I'm not trying to correct you. We are under God's judgment. John MacArthur has numerous good sermons on this, the sexual revolution, homosexual revolution, and I believe we are past the tipping point, but I will keep fighting and giving the gospel and calling my representative a congressman, sir, but other than that, I don't know what else we really can do.
Yeah, I know, Christine. I agree with you. We have to do what we can to be light in this world, as God has called us to be salt and light right down to the end. And so we can't stop taking a stand, but I do agree we're already at the point of judgment. I mean, over the last few years, it's happening in our country, all this motion. It seems that it's begun. All out repentance could be worth that, but it would have to be one like what happened in the top down.
Thank you, Christine, for the call. We've got Merle next in Tennessee. You're on the air.
Yeah, Jim, I want to ask Gary if he would agree that the COVID was released for the vaccine, and not the vaccine for the COVID, and that the vaccine has weakened the immune system now of those that took it across the board, and it was a setup for the next pandemic that's waiting in the wings.
Well, I can tell you this from personal experience from people who we know. People's immune systems have been noticeably weakened. Even regular flu symptoms and RSV and everything that's coming around now, people are staying sick much longer. We know people that it's something that they would have gotten over in 3 or 4 days before, now it's taking 3 or 4 weeks. And so that has definitely had a huge impact. And I believe when the next pandemic is released, I think people are going to react much more negatively health-wise to it, especially those who've been vaccinated before.
Thank you for the call. Marina's next in East Troy. You're on the air.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Gary a question. I see his name in a book I'm reading. It's called The Killing of Uncle Sam by Rodney Howard Brown and Paul Williams. And Gary has supplied some information concerning this stuff that's going on, about the names of the who was with the Rothschild Bank and all this sort of thing that started this whole thing with the Federal Reserve and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Yeah, a number of people, especially over the last 2 years, have contacted us requesting use of our information and books and materials that they've been putting out there. And some of these people, they had not realized before the history of how far back all this goes. So everything we're experiencing today, it hasn't just been thrust upon us without any planning. The groundwork, the foundation, the spiritual reception has been coming for a long, long time. And now these forces are, they're in their final push, trying to make all this happen very quickly. And we'll see how this plays out in the next few years.
We're going to squeeze one last call in. Dominique in Quantico, Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Hello, Mr. As we're talking about Event 201 and the latest one in October, and it says global oligarchs are not done. But they're also currently continuing to kill people in our hospitals with the COVID protocol. Today, our family just returned from Wisconsin Capitol rally, where we heard from, among others, Scott Sherpa, who started rape with murder, which Jim has interviewed before here, and then also John Zinglein, whom the hospital tried to murder, who's also the person in the Attorney General case before the Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2 weeks, also in contact. But knowing all this, Mr. Cox,